I don't know if I'll get up today. I don't know if I'll give one single today. My whole outlook is sunken gray, and I have no idea why I woke up this way. Got my phone in my right hand, my books on the nightstand. If I unlock and I app pop, I'm stuck there, I'm a dead man. So Lord, give me the strength to please read one page. If it works in any way, I'll move on to the next thing. Oh dear, I got my socks on, I'm coming up.
Welcome to Positively Undefeated. This is a podcast that talks about the day-to-day struggle ordinary people have over their demons and how each day they remain positively undefeated. We share ideas and ways that you can empower yourself to remain strong so that you can embrace the journey of living.
Okay, welcome to our podcast, Positively Undefeated. I'm Beryl, Stricker. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't had a chance, go to your favorite podcasting platform, Apple or Spotify or Google Podcast, and, just make sure you follow us, and also you can review us. Those things help us a lot. If you can share it to people then it helps get the word out. Also go to our website, which is evenoneless.com, and you can find out more information. You can also connect with us there. Well, Whitney, glad to have you.
Good to be here.
Whitney Foster, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. And, where are you from? Are you from Lawton?
Lawton. I was born there. I did move around for most of my life till I was 17. We left when I was gone from 7 years old to about 17. My dad was a minister. So I've lived quite a few places in the United States. Yeah. And then we came back to Lawton. And
that's where you're originally from?
Mm-hmm. All my family's there.
I think what I'm amazed by about Lawton is that when you add Fort Sill, I always got to put that in there. When you add Fort Sill, which if you guys listening don't know, Fort Sill Army Base is there in Lawton. But when you add Fort Sill, I think it's the third largest town in Oklahoma. It's big.
It is big, but it's very small at the same time.
Yeah. Well, so tell me what you do for your job and career
so my day job, my real job is I sell eyeglasses.
Oh, okay.
My husband's family worked in the optical industry. And so when we got married, our son was about 7 months old. I lost my babysitter, and then my mother-in-law had someone that ended up stealing from her, so they needed an employee. So I used to work with children before that, but I took a pay cut and went because our son could go to work with me. Yeah. And now I'm one of the office managers there, and we work mostly, our biggest part is with Native American tribes. In Oklahoma, we put eyeglasses on consignment there, and we do the frames and lenses at a wholesale cost to sell them cheaper. And then we also distribute to optometrists in Oklahoma, Texas, different states. Yeah. And we have our own frame line that we have that is named after our kids as well.
So do you guys do any business online, or is it mainly just?
People can order, but we don't have a setup where you can go buy it or anything. Some people do call and send us our stuff, but yeah. We have it, mostly people just come in. We do have a setup in our office in Lawton too.
Well, that's pretty neat. So, originally, and how I had heard about you is that I was shared an audio clip.
Yes.
And then I made a TikTok with it. And so if you don't mind, tell that story and tell how you were in that situation and really what happened, because people listening probably didn't see the TikTok. They didn't hear the video. So
I didn't even know that Emily was going to send that to you. She had just messaged me because I'd posted on my personal Facebook about it. Yeah. But I have several autoimmune diseases. And so to type that out was hard. So I just sent her the voice message. Yeah. And then she sent me the video you made, that was really touching. But I was in the summertime, we have a camper out at the lake at Lake Latonka, and I was coming in to go to my sister's baby shower. Mm-hmm. And I was just coming up to the light, and it was just turning green. And then so I was going through the intersection, and all of a sudden I could hear this car going really fast beside me. And we were maybe a foot apart, 12 inches, not very far, just from the light pole to the curb. And a car hit it, and their tire flew up in the air, and I looked up, and it was headed straight in my windshield. So I accelerated really fast, but then I pulled over and stopped, and I told my daughter to wait in the car. I was like, I've got to go back and see if that person's okay. There's just I don't know that someone could survive. Mm-hmm. I mean, they hit it. They were probably going 60 miles an hour more. It was bad. So by the time I got back there, some other people that had been around us stopped, and there was a young lady. We couldn't really see her because she had slid down under the front. And, so we all tried to work to get her out because it looked like she was having a seizure of some sort, we thought. Mm-hmm. And so me, and another lady, she actually happened to be an officer's wife. So we started checking her purse, her phone, to see if there's any kind of medical papers in there, like if she had a condition or anything, phone numbers, but we couldn't get into the phone. Right. She didn't have like an emergency thing where you could get a number or something. We could not get into the car to get it unlocked. But a police officer showed up, and he was able to break a window, and then they helped get her out. They sent us across the street and had me hold onto her bag and everything. And in it, I had found a picture of what I knew it was her, and it had a little child and her husband. And then there was the footprints from like the hospital sends you home. Mm-hmm. And so I was just holding on to it. And then we noticed that they were giving her CPR. Mm-hmm. And so we knew she wasn't breathing. They ended up finally taking her, and so I know people that work at the hospital here in town and things. And so I was finally able to find out that they had taken her to the city, but she had passed away. Wow. And so the next day I was going to church, and I just felt like, because her license and stuff did not show that she was from this area. Yeah. So I didn't know if she was here visiting or what. And so I didn't know if there would be any family here. So I felt so strongly that I needed to take flowers to just, in my mind, it was just to make sure that she was remembered, that she lived. Yeah. And when I got there were two people standing there, and the guy was crying, and I was realizing like, oh God, that's her husband. Yeah. And so I parked down a little ways away, and I was like, I don't want to go over there. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't. Death is hard. My mom passed away almost 14 years ago, and it's hard. And people say all these things to you and stuff, but none of it helps, to be honest. Yeah. But when I got over there, the husband was on the phone talking to somebody, so his friend was there, and I found out they were here stationed at Fort Sill for military. And she had been in the hospital recently for suicide. And I found out that she had actually meant to kill herself that day. Wow. She had left her children, they were like 2 and an infant, brand new baby, at home alone, and called the neighbor and told them that she left them there. Yeah. And so the friend had told me that the lady's past was a very dark one. Yeah. And she really struggled mentally. And so then her husband got off the phone, and I just kind of asked him if he wanted me to tell him what kind of happened and what I saw. Mm-hmm. I know he was really worried because I guess he had texted her. Mm-hmm. But I kind of just tried to say what I felt like I should and not say too much. And I just told him, because he had wondered where the pictures went on the fridge. I told him that those things were in there. And I told him, I was like, just know, when she went, she took 3 people that she loved the most with her. Mm-hmm. And I told him that I had struggled with suicide really bad. Yeah. And I told him, I said, I don't want you to blame yourself. I said, because as someone who's been there before in that dark space, mm-hmm. It's not about, no one put me there. Yeah. Like you didn't do that. I said, sometimes the darkness is just too much. Yeah. And I said, please don't blame yourself, and, make sure that you get help if you need it and things. Mm-hmm. And so then I just told him that she wasn't alone. We all were right there with her. So she wasn't alone. Mm-hmm. And that's when he just started crying, and he asked if he could give me a hug. Mm-hmm. And he held on to me for a long time. It really hit me hard, because when I was in that darkness, I I did get out of it. My kids text me.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how I got the text because I had turned my phone off. I do not remember turning it back on. And
do you think, I mean, for me, listening to the story, it's like, it's like, there's no way that was a coincidence.
No, it
Being
wasn't.
in that place at that time, the whole story, it's like,
Yeah.
I really believe that God put you, in his family and this, lady's life during this time period.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
No, I know he did.
Yeah.
I know that I needed to see the other side of suicide.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you attempt suicide or that's what you're going to do, you're not there to see what happens.
No.
Your mind is telling you that they're better off without you.
No.
And that man was not better off.
Mm-hmm.
He was not doing good. He was blaming himself.
Yeah. I think that it also brings to light, like, I mean, I can relate to exactly what you're saying. It's like you have these thoughts and you don't really connect them to your family and to your friends and maybe your kids.
Yeah.
But, one thing, it's like whenever someone commits suicide, like there's this really a bunch of unanswered questions, you know what I mean, about those last moments, about everything that happened. And even though, like, to some people that may sound like, and it is a little bit dark. It is a little bit, of course, tragic, but also it's like, man, we have this innate need to know,
Yes,
like what happened. And most of us, like when our family members commit suicide or somebody we know, we don't get that. We don't get that closure.
right.
And in this situation, I feel like that you might have also given them some closure.
I hope I did.
I mean, it seems that way to me because that's like I think about it a lot. Like, my cousins that committed suicide, I think about their last minutes or few minutes or, those last moments and, that what they were going through, what they were thinking, of course. And some of those questions will never be answered.
Right.
I think that in this situation, it seems to me that you're able to give him some closure. And
I hope
when
so.
a lot of families don't get that.
Yeah. I know. I just know I just felt like I had to go there. I couldn't hardly breathe because I kept trying to do because I was trying to get back out to the lake because I already missed so much of it on Saturday. And so I was trying to get back out there and I was like, I'll take them in the morning because it was right by my office.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll just do it tomorrow. And I just felt like God kept telling me, you need to do it now.
Yeah.
And then when I pulled up, they were there and I was kind of like thinking about, oh, great God, now what you got me into.
Yeah.
But what I had planned to tell him was nothing that came out.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel like God gave me the words that man needed to hear.
Yeah.
Because someday he's going to have to share that story with her children.
Yeah.
And the kids, I know my kids, they were very scared that they caused it or what happened, what, went on. And I don't want to do that to them, but, I will say I have struggled with it a couple times since, even after that's happened.
I think that is
it takes time.
That, like, if you are around somebody that commits suicide, that it's automatically going to make you not ever want to do it again. Think about it.
Right.
It's just that's really not true. I know I had thoughts after my cousin had committed suicide, and it doesn't do what you think it would do.
Yeah, it did for a while, but then when I was just so low, the only thing to me that saved me in that moment was God. That's the only reason why I didn't go through with it.
I want you, I want to ask you this question, but I want you to feel comfortable. So if you don't, it's okay. We can move on to something else. But, what do you think, like, as you've thought about, like, your mental health and things that have happened, what do you think drove you to that point where you felt like you were hopeless? And, is there a certain circumstance, or do you think it's just kind of like something you felt like you're almost born with?
So for me, I have, struggled with mental illness or depression, panic attacks, anxiety from a very, very young age.
Yeah.
I learned that I have been going through therapy. I knew that I needed to go and get help, especially that one day that it was really bad. And that's the first time, because the first time it was more of a trigger. Like, my husband said some words that are completely innocent. There was nothing on his part, but for whatever it was in that moment where I was feeling that low, it triggered me. And for me, what scared me is I wasn't in control.
Yeah.
My mind took over, and my mind had also blocked a lot of things from me that happened in my childhood and things. And I had been working in therapy towards that to uncover that. But, my personal experience for me when I got that low, I, had been selling, like fake luxury goods and things. But also, I feel like it was like kind of a catalyst for a lot of things. In November, my husband and I went to a piano bar, and I had actually been drugged. Like the bartender, the waitress, cause that's the only space it could have happened in.
Yeah.
And, I almost lost my life from that. So it kind of took a while for me to get back physically. But then, in December, so a lot of my stuff was taken, and customs sent me letters. And then this last time when it was, and I know that was the lowest I'd ever been. I thought that I was going to jail or going to prison, because I found out that's a very serious crime. And I had I wasn't doing good at all. No. And my family recognized it, which I had set, my therapist after the first time had made me set things in place. And I was trying to follow the rules of what we had set if I got to feeling that way again. But this time it was more, the other times I had felt low because of what someone had done to me. But for me in that moment, I had done that myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is going to cause so much trauma to my kids. And I was so low. And my sister I'd been at a birthday party for one of my nephews, had called my husband. I didn't know this, and told him, don't leave her alone. Yeah. That he's like, she said she's that low. And he's like, oh, I don't think so. And I'm like, no, she is. But what neither of them thought about is the fact that I had to drive from the birthday party to my husband by myself. Yeah. And, I was going home. I wasn't going to meet my husband. Yeah. I don't know how and, I was sitting at a stoplight in our neighborhood, and I looked down. I have this tattoo on my arm. Yeah. That I got after my first severe, I had tried previous when I was younger. I had tried to take my life one time, but that one time, it was September. The next day I had wrote a poem, but the only thing that just kept coming to me, it was just black. It was black. Anywhere I looked in my mind or anything, all I saw was black and like ugliness. And I had this tattoo artist design these stars, and I had it, and it said, they are my light because black. And it was, each one of them has my kid's initial. And I hated this tattoo where I put it. I hated it having it here. I've actually considered getting it covered up so many times. Yeah. And then I also have a heart that I got with my oldest daughter with the suicide symbol. And as I was sitting at that stoplight sign, I looked down and I saw this tattoo. And I knew in that moment I couldn't do it. Yeah. And so I turned my car around and I drove to my husband, and they stayed with me. Yeah. And they didn't leave me alone. And then about 3 nights later, my mind finally let me see what it had been hiding from me for almost over 40 years. Yeah. And I was thinking that night when I was laying in bed, it was late at night, and I thought about all the stuff I'd gone through in life, how many times I'd tried to take my life, which it's only April, but I'd tried 3 times this year alone. And all the things that I'd been through in life, the trauma, And I was thinking, how did I make it? And then the thought entered my head, and it was, but God.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mind let me see everything. But it has shown me that for me to heal, and I feel for other people to heal, the only way you truly can is through Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's that dark and no one else is there, and it's just you and the darkness,
Yeah.
He's the light. And it forever changed my life.
Yeah, I'm just blown away because, it takes a lot of bravery to be able to talk about stuff, like nobody wants to admit that they've got struggles and that they've done something that causes them pain, or other people have done stuff but it's like, I don't think that you can get better unless you're able to find a way to talk about it to somebody,
right?
And the fact that you are willing to talk about it, that just, I want to tell you how much I appreciate that, because I think that for me to hear, your words, and for other people to hear those words, those matter, because I feel like a lot of us do is we kind of hide that we're struggling.
Yeah.
And, you hear the word stigma and stuff like that.
Yes.
And there is. I mean, there's a huge negative stigma.
There very much is.
Mental health. And, and I think I may be not quite accurate when I say this, but it's like, I think especially what I notice for women, then they're labeled crazy or,
emotional.
Emotional. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to say it. And I think for men, it may be a little bit different, but the truth is that all that does is make you want to kind of crawl in a hole and not see anybody and not be, not exposed, not open up. And so I want to thank you for being, for being open. And I know that is difficult. You've talked about Jesus, you talked about God. What do you think, if you had to pick top 5, these 5 things, no matter what they are, have made a difference in your life? Like when it comes to your mental health, I don't know if it's family support or if it's, do you have maybe 5 things that have really made a difference, do you think?
Number one would be God or Jesus for me. Number 2 would be my husband.
Yeah.
When I look back over all the things I put him through because of my trauma and my mental illness.
Yeah.
I don't know why he didn't run away scared.
Yeah.
Or not scared, but just run away like this woman's crazy.
Yeah.
Because, I'll be honest, I was 22 when we got married. I probably had an average of 2 panic attacks a day. And at least once a week, it would be so bad that I would hide in the closet and hug a teddy bear that I'd had since I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And I'm 23, 24, 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he would give me time, let me calm down some, and then he would come in there and talk to me, and he would get me out of the closet because I was 14 the first time I hid in a closet from my mom.
Mm.
And so that became the place where I would escape into the dark.
Yeah. Mm.
And when you're in that mindset, the last place you need to be is somewhere where it's dark, because your mind's already dark. So now that I can look back, and I've told him so many times in the last 6 weeks since my mind opened, and I'm truly healed now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm truly healed from that. And you can be. That's what's so amazing about it. I know that I am never, ever going to want to take my life again.
Yeah.
I know what it feels like to be alive. And it's amazing. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I've told him thank you so many times, because if it had been anybody else, and if it was him doing that and I was the one that was married to him, I would have left.
Yeah.
Because it is, and there's still such a stigma about the mental health thing. Number 3 would be my children, because they showed me what unconditional love is.
Yeah.
Instead of getting angry at me or whatever, whenever I have struggled, they've all made sure to check in with me. That week, not long ago, my son was messaging me every day, positive things, scriptures, different things. My girls would text to tell me they love me, or they would give me hugs. Like, they kept showing me that they loved me despite me having this, what most of the world looks at, defect or crazy, because they do. They look at mental illness is just as real as the lupus that I have or my rheumatoid arthritis. It is an illness that I deal with that is actually more severe than any of those, because it makes me want to take my own life. And
you think that plays a big part of it? Like, what do you call it? Like, basically, like chronic pain, or and to me, that seems. I've heard multiple stories about people struggling with chronic pain and not being able to find any hope with that, or not, gone through all kinds of tests and all kinds of doctors and all that, and really they don't seem to feel like they have the answers.
Yeah.
And the scary part about that is that when you're dealing with that, and it almost feels like people think you're faking it.
Yes.
I mean, that's the impression I get from listening to people's story. Do you feel like that at times that people looked at you like, oh, she's faking it, she's not really,
Until I got diagnosed with lupus last year, yes. I've had rheumatoid arthritis I've been diagnosed, I should say, for about 15 years. Yeah. But when you look at me, I look perfectly healthy, and I'm anything but healthy.
Yeah.
Where it was hard for me, I'm the oldest of 5 children. I always was the strong one. I was the one caretaking for my siblings. My mom, I was her person that she took out. Had to be strong in the family for everybody. And then when she passed, I now take care of my grandparents, and I'm their person. And so for me, the illnesses, I've always been a very strong person, athletically, all that stuff. And these illnesses that I got saddled with made me feel weak. And that's something my therapist would always get on to me about, because he would ask me how I felt or what it made me feel. And I was like, it makes me feel weak. Or makes me feel less than because I'm not strong, or I can't pick up this box anymore. I have to take a nap today. I can't eat this food. And I looked at it more as a weakness against myself, like I was betraying myself. So that's how for me, it got me down. Because I can deal with pain. Pain I'm used to. Pain and me are old friends.
Yeah.
But admitting that I can't do what I used to do, I can't be that person anymore, it was very hard to give up. And that was a big thing I struggled with till recently, really.
I think that I've always really believe you take something like loneliness, boredom, helplessness. When you feel helpless, you've been pretty much an able-bodied person.
Yeah.
And then, but, that brings you to this place that that you necessarily haven't been before, where you have to really, I guess, reach out for help in ways that you wouldn't think you'd have to reach out for help.
Yes. And I do not like asking for help.
Yeah.
And I now have to ask for help all the time.
Yeah.
I have to have my kids get me stuff. One thing that was really hard for me, my grandma had bought a 48-pound turkey for Thanksgiving, and I was picking it up to go cook it. I could not carry it. And so my grandma was 89 years old carrying this turkey, and I at 40 didn't even have the strength to lift it. Yeah. And that was it was part of it, to where I would just be like, what's the point of being alive if I can't do anything? It did play a part in that, from that side of things.
So you mentioned, we talked about God, we talked about your husband, we talked about your kids. Is there anything else that you think made a big impact?
So I was raised in what I consider a religious cult. My great grandfather helped start it. And my grandpa was a preacher in the church, and my dad was a preacher in the church. And then my dad we left when I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
And so church for me for the last 23 years, I will say 22 years, probably. We had a very love-hate relationship. Sometimes I could tolerate going to church. Sometimes I couldn't. In January of last year, my son was like, why don't you just go to church with me? Go where I'm at. Cause I kept trying different churches. I didn't feel at home. And my therapist, one of my goals was to get out of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to church, and then our church, I go to Lawton First Assembly. They have different groups. I know a lot of churches do that now. Instead of like a Sunday night service, you have groups.
Yeah.
So I made myself sign up for mom's group.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a group of women. We just go, and it's moms, and we'll have like a little lesson, and then we talk. And it gave me a safe space to we just take out our frustrations, something our kid did that week. And it's just another mom to be like, oh my God, I feel that too. So I met so many friends, and so for me, that would be the next one, is with my church. Mm-hmm. They got me involved in things that was way out of my comfort zone, but now I feel like I'm at home. My kids get mad at me now because walking through church takes forever to leave, because I always see somebody that I want to talk to now. Yeah. And so for me, having a good church family, a church home, to actually be at peace with going to church, because I struggled for 21 years, 22 years to go back to church and just to love Jesus, and because it didn't come naturally to me because of how I was raised. And
how do you think you make that switch? Like, I think a lot of people struggle with that. They, growing up, they have eyes polluted or, whatever. They have a messed up version of God.
Right.
Because of their childhood, because of, their experience. And I think a lot of people are in that category, it seems to me.
Yeah, they are.
Then, I think you either have two choices where you never make that switch to the truth about who God is. Mm-hmm. But then you also see a lot of people who do make that switch. And it's like, there's people that refuse to step foot in any church because of what happened when they were young. So how do you think you were able to make that switch to more like a healthy version, a truer version of God versus maybe what you grew up with?
I will say that, first off, being in the moms group made me realize that all those people are very normal.
Yeah.
They do some of the same things. They may get angry and say a bad word to their kid, and something that I always felt, oh God, that was horrible. Yeah. So it made me see them as more human. The preacher at my church preaches like I have never heard someone preach in my entire life. And I'm a preacher's daughter. Yeah. I've gone to a lot of church services. I have listened to a lot of sermons, and I've never heard someone preach the way he does. He's very open about his drug addiction that he had when he was younger. And he was a preacher's kid. And he's very open about all of that straight from the pulpit. And then I think I also had to realize that, and people may not believe this, but for me, I had to realize that it's religion that turns a lot of people off. Mm-hmm. And that's what turned me off, is religion.
Yeah. Man-made stuff.
Yes. Man-made rules that you have to follow. Cause like growing up in the religion I was in, there was a little black book. Mm-hmm. And you had to follow all of these men-written rules. And some people may disagree with what I'm about to say, but you also have to remember that the Bible was interpreted by men. Mm-hmm. So I think that for me, I was able to finally see that it was more religion that I did not like. And I have met so many people at church, and I've realized, oh, they're human. Mm-hmm. And so humans make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that for each individual, I know churches have denominations or different things, and they may have certain things that's how they run things. But I think that for each person, you have to just open the Bible and let the Bible tell you what God wants it to tell you. And it may not tell everybody the same thing. There may be something that you struggle with that I don't struggle with. Like some people struggle with alcohol. I could care less if I have a drink, but for some people that's a struggle. So I think there's different things for different people. And then it has to be more about you having a relationship with Jesus and God than any church religion.
Yeah.
And so that's for me how I was, I think, able to heal, because I was able to get close to people now that at church that I was like, wow, they're normal just like me. And they were very open about it. And I've never been in a church where people were open about all that stuff. Or like I said, a preacher openly talking about all of that stuff. And one of the things that changed for me was he preached a sermon and he said, he's like, church, we have got to start treating mental illness as an illness and not looking at it as a flaw.
Yeah.
And he tell people, oh, you just need to pray and give it to Jesus. He goes, it's not that simple. People have real struggles with mental illness, and it's a real disease, and they need help. And you can't just tell them, oh, you just need to pray about it and give it to God. He goes, and I've never heard a preacher say that before. I was always just grown up taught you need to just give it to Jesus. Worrying is a sin. Worrying is fear is a sin. You need to just give it to Jesus. But at the end of the day, it isn't. It's not that simple. Mental illness is a real disease, and I struggled with it. And so that's why I want to share my story, but I want to share it in a way that it makes even church people see that mental illness is real, and you do have to stop telling people to don't just give it to Jesus, because you actually need help. Not to say Jesus is who healed me, but I also have been in therapy. I also do take medication for depression. I work very closely with my doctor and my therapist. I have a plan with my family because even though I know today I will never do that again, your mind is this place that scientists stuff still don't know what all the mind can do. And like I said, that one time it triggered. I was not in control of anything that happened. I don't even remember turning my phone back on that day or anything or getting to where I was at. So I have to keep those plans in place. We have that stuff. My family knows what signs to watch for, because it's real. And even though I know Jesus can save me if I ever get in that moment, it's still very real, and you have to treat it as such.
I agree. I think that you can take something like maybe a broken bone, well, do an x-ray, it's broken, that's what we need to do. Something that is very tangible. You can see it and you can, we fix it. And unfortunately, that's really like how a lot of medical, that's how they work, and it makes sense. It's like, here's the problem.
Fix it.
What we need to do to fix it, whether it be surgery or whether it be a medication or what. And I think when you're talking about mental health and you're talking about those struggles, even something like alcohol or drug addiction, it's not something you can see.
Right.
And it's not like, it's very like a gray area. And so I think that's where a lot of people struggle with, how to help. I'm curious, you talk about your husband. You made it clear the fact that he stuck around. I mean, that obviously made a difference. Is there something else that there might be a husband listening to this to be like, my wife's struggling. I want to help her, but I'm not real sure the best way to help her. So do you have any advice on that?
Well, one of the things he did, now I will say, we've been married it will be 22 years this year. About 2 years ago, I was done.
Yeah.
But we sit and we talked, and so we came up with a plan. Because in a marriage, it's not just one person, it's two. And you gotta work. I think it depends on the person, the situation, the husband and the wife. But the biggest thing is you have to communicate. And so that's what we started doing.
Yeah.
And then another thing we do, each month 1 month he has to plan a date. this next month, I have to plan a date. It doesn't have to be, it can just be going and sitting and getting a cup of coffee. But we do that intentional time. But then one thing what he did for me that was a big part of my healing is he just kept showing me that he loved me. Mm-hmm. He would send me the corniest videos or TikToks or just different things, always telling me that I was beautiful, that he loved me, that he saw all these things in me I did not see.
Yeah.
And he just kept telling me that. Mm-hmm. And he showed me what true love is.
Yeah.
That he loves me despite all of my flaws, and I have a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So for a husband whose wife is probably struggling mentally, a mom is always so tired.
Yeah.
So I noticed one of the things, he started helping me more at home, or he started taking on more responsibility with the kids. But I think for women, we also have got to start telling our husbands that we need help and quit trying to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's something I had to realize I had to do. But he's so funny. And even when I'm so mad at him, he'll do something. And this is what I hate the most. Mm-hmm. He makes me start laughing. Yeah. And then I can't be mad at him anymore.
That's great.
But like one of the things, that he's done, and I think it's different for each individual, but I think if you pay attention to those little things, my family hates this, but my grandpa, he always would give you half a stick of gum because of his spearmint or something. He's like, you're just chewing the gum to make your breath smell better. It's not for anything else. You don't need to waste a full piece. So I will always give people half a stick of gum. My kids will be like, just give me the whole pack. I'm like, no, because like each time you ask me for a whole stick, then I know in 2 days I'm going to need to go buy more gum. So in my stocking for Christmas, he cut a pack of gum in half and gave me half of it. So it's little things like that he's showed me that he loved me despite that I didn't love myself. Yeah. And so that really helped.
I know something on that note that really has helped me, and is also understanding that people that we're around, and I mean, they're sick too. You know, It may not be the same like you're talked about, but it helps me to show a little more compassion for people, you know, that may get on my nerves, or I may feel like, you know, I just can't relate to what they're struggling with or what's going on or how they acted.
Right.
You know, and I like, for me to just really realize that we're all kind of sick. We've all got something going on.
Yeah.
And some people are better at hiding it. Some people, you'll never know it because maybe they're just rude.
Right.
And then they walk off and you never talk to them again.
Right.
But, you know, those things help me when I start to realize, man, we've all got something.
Yeah.
You know, and too many times I think we're so quick to, we put on a good show.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that sometimes the people who seem like they got it the most together may be struggling the most.
Well, I will say that I have had, my 2 daughters, my oldest daughter, my husband had, right out of high school, he was 18.
Yeah.
And he had full custody of her. So when we got married, she was 10, but I actually was her babysitter. He got full custody when she was 4. And so that's when I started babysitting her. And then, my son is my only biological child. Mm-hmm. And then I have a 12-year-old daughter who we adopted through foster care.
Yeah.
And so, I have 2 daughters that, their mothers gave them up. Mm-hmm. But I know that what I went through was so that I could be the mother I am to them today.
Yeah. And
so that's why sometimes people would say to me when I made up my mind, actually it was for me, music is a big thing. And when Kelly Clarkson came out with that song, I can't even think of the name of it right now, but she was talking about how she saw herself doing the same thing that her mother did. Mm. And now it says the words, I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And my son was like 3 or 4 and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing exactly what was done. I'm continuing the pattern. Mm. So I started way back then. And I slowly did it by getting from going 1 day without a panic attack, and I celebrated that victory, to going 2 days, to a week, to a month, so I could go a year. So, I mean, it's taking me, my son is fixing to be 20 next month. So it's taken me 16 years to start healing. But what I started doing was I realized that if I want my daughters to face their fears, or if I want them to go to therapy for whatever their trauma has done to them, I have to do it. As a parent, if we don't show our children how to heal or how to deal with life, then they're not going to be prepared when they have children, and the cycle continues. So I started posting first about facing fears and different things. But then when I started posting about, when I posted that next day that I had tried to commit suicide the day before, I had so many people like, I would have never thought you struggled with mental illness. You don't seem like that type of a person at all. And so that's why I want to share my story. That's why I'm very vocal about it. And I've gotten backlash. I've got people like that are like really concerned and saying like, is something wrong with her? What's wrong with her? Don't you think you need to get her help? You know, to my husband, he's like, she is getting help. She is in therapy. But I was very vocal about it. And especially since I posted about 6 weeks ago about my trauma and finally opening up and seeing what all my mind had been hiding, because your mind can block. I mean, it blocked years. Now I see things and remember things. I'm like, how did I not remember that stuff? But my mind blocked it from me, because I think in order for me to be strong for everybody for my whole life, I couldn't handle what was happening to me and that at the same time. And people, I've had several people that they've now started sharing their story. One lady, I didn't know this, and I've known her since she was a little girl, but she had had 16 miscarriages. And I didn't know that. Only like a handful of people knew that. And because after I shared my story, like a couple days later, her niece saw her crying and asked her why. And so she told her about the babies, and she had named every one of them. And her niece brought her a card that she made her, and she had written every single one of her babies' names. And she shared that on Facebook for the first time. And she told me that seeing me have the strength to share my story gave her the strength to share hers. And so I think if more of us continue to share our story and be open and show that we're all just a bunch of broken, messed up people too, that it will change the perspective of mental illness from someone that you always think of, you know, the old sanitariums they had, or, oh, someone in a straight jacket, or someone that's pulling their hair out and doing all these crazy things. That's not really what mental illness is. Mental illness can be someone that looks exactly like me and who people think has it all together. And obviously I don't.
Do you ever experience like what I call actually, I think I read this from somebody, but a vulnerability hangover, like where you share and then let's say the next day or hours later, you're just like, you know, oh my gosh, I can't believe I shared this.
Yeah.
But it's like, I realized that I have those. So like, well, I get up and I'll talk to people about, you know, my story or whatever. And then I'll just feel just like exhausted afterwards. And then of course, second guessing what I said, how I said it, you know.
I'll probably do that the whole way home.
Oh, I know that. I actually brought that up because like, I feel like you will, because that's just the way it is. Yeah. When you are vulnerable and open. But I also want to encourage you that like it was the right move, you know. Yeah. It's like vulnerability is always right. Yes. But it's also, it's strange how it's like a deep down protection thing that we do. Yeah. Know? But it also, you know, that can be like open up for yourself, like where you even question, like, why am I doing this? Yeah. But there's some realness there that needs to happen, despite the vulnerability hangover.
Well, I was been super nervous about coming here to do this because, you know, I've never done this. Yeah. And then I've only openly spoke about what I went through a few weeks ago, about 6 weeks ago, only in my mom's group.
Yeah.
I shared it there. And then I've shared it with family and a few other people, but this will be the first time, besides like sharing on Facebook, but like actually talking about it, because sometimes like when you're talking, you end up, something comes out that you may not like, oh crap, like you said,
Yeah.
why did I say that? And so what I made myself do this time is instead I just prayed. I was like, I'm not going to think about, because normally, like I said before, I saw that husband there. I had this whole thing. This is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And then like after my mind that night let me see what all it had been hiding, that whole day, because my first thing besides talking to my husband, and then I called my best friend at like 2 a.m. because I just needed two people to know, because she works with me, and I needed that day, because I kept asking her, I really called you. I really told you that happened to me, right? And she goes, yeah, because it's hard for me to be like, oh my God, that happened to me.
Yeah.
That's what my mind's been hiding. Because that is something I struggled with my therapist, because we've been trying so hard. I really conquered every goal he set for me, but we couldn't get past that mental block.
Mm-hmm.
And he had told me what my goal was to work on was accepting that I may never know, that my mind may never let me see. And I had to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, I thought that whole day, because I was like, okay, my first two people I have to talk to are my kids. I can't even talk to my sisters. I have to talk to my children first. And everything I had planned out to say to them, I didn't say a single one of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was coming here today, and what I made myself do, all I kept doing was praying, God, I'm only going to say what you put into my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have this planned speech. I'm not going to have this plan of, oh, this is how I'm going to respond, or try to figure out, because one thing I love to do is take a situation and then plan like 10 different scenarios that could happen, and then have a response to each of them. And so today I didn't let myself do that. I downloaded an audiobook and I listened to it the whole way here. So that way I would not, because when I read, because I was raised without television, we weren't allowed to listen to anything or sing anything but hymns.
Mm-hmm.
So I read any book I could get my hands on. And so one of the most frustrating things about me from my husband is when I'm reading a book, I'm in that story.
Mm-hmm.
And they can be calling my name. I've taught them, because he would get frustrated. I'm like, you're going to have to literally come up and touch me to get my attention. If I'm that lost, I don't hear you right beside me, because I will get that invested in it. And so that's what I did. I downloaded a book that had like the prologue seemed like, okay, this is a good book. And it did. I can't wait to listen to it 2 hours on my way home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to have that much time to listen to it, because I started doing that in the car to help keep my mind from doing what our minds always do.
Mm-hmm.
Because since I've been sharing this story for the last 6 to 8 weeks with people, I've done what you just said. I've analyzed it over and over, like, oh God, I shouldn't have said that. Or what if that came out wrong and they take it the wrong way?
Right.
Or what if that wasn't the right thing to share in that moment? And so that's what I started doing, was making myself listen to audiobooks and things to train my mind to quit being a runaway train, basically. Because when you do suffer from mental illness, panic attacks, that is one of the coping mechanisms, I would say, for me, is taking a scenario, this could happen, and then trying to plan different ways around it, so that way I don't have a panic attack or something in that moment.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of the Bible verse. There's a couple of them that reminds me of it. Reminds me of like the Bible verse when it talks about when you don't know what to pray, the Holy Spirit prays for you.
Yes.
And I think that, like, even if you take a story like Stephen in the Bible, who was martyred, but the words that came out of his mouth, it was very clear that it wasn't his words, that it was God's words. And then he was killed for it. But I'm like, I agree with you. I'm like, I think that sometimes it's like, it's easy to script a talk exactly like you've analyzed it and written. But I think that the power comes from really allowing God to speak through you.
Right.
And I think that the willingness for like you to come here and just allow God to speak through you, I think that shows the growth that God has, how he's grown you.
Yeah.
During this path.
Well, my preacher, and I've never understood this, because I mean, I have heard this my whole life, but then like my preacher was preaching it and he would say like, for some people to truly know what your purpose is, what God's purpose is for you, you have to hit your lowest low. You've got to hit what you call rock bottom. And I did 6 weeks ago, that day that I was sitting at that stop sign. That was it. That was my lowest point. I was there.
Yeah.
I was done.
Mm-hmm.
But now I know that my purpose is to help someone else, to share my story, to share what Jesus did for me to save someone else's life. If it only saves one person from committing suicide, I would go through all the pain again. One thing my oldest daughter would always ask me is, why does God let bad things happen to people? Like, why doesn't he stop the bad things from happening? Why do little children have to get hurt?
Yeah.
Why do people have to go through what they go through? And that Thursday when I talked to her, I looked her in the eye and I said, Melissa, you always ask me that question. And you've never understood why God would allow this stuff to happen. And I told her, I said, and this is one of the shirts I actually designed. I said, because there's beauty in the pain. And the beauty in the pain is Jesus. And I had to go through what I went through and what my mind and things had done to me for me to be the mother to my daughters that I need to be. Because the pain that I felt when my mind let me see, it felt like my heart had been ripped open and someone was just basically beating it with like a meat tenderizer. The pain almost consumed me.
Yeah.
But I was able to look in her face and I said, that pain you feel? And so, the pain I'm talking about? And she looked at me and she said, yes. And she just like tears like rolling down her cheeks. I said, I know what that pain is and you're not alone anymore. I want you to know you're not alone. And she just started crying. But on the other hand, like for my son, he's got the kindest, gentlest spirit. He hasn't never really had, he hasn't had a trauma. He's, out of a lot of his friends, he still is one of the only kid, a few number of that his parents are still together. And loving Jesus has so easy for him. He is so involved in church. He works in the coffee shop. Everybody knows who Ashton Foster is. And now when he'll be talking, I'm like, oh, yeah, my son Ashton, like, you're Ashton's mom? I'm like, yeah. And they tell me he's such a great kid. He's such a, I don't know, good Christian. That's just the word that comes to mind right now, but he's such a good witness, I guess, for Jesus. But that comes easy for him, but that wasn't easy for me. And it's not easy for a lot of people. But today it's very easy for me to do that. But I had to hit rock bottom to come back up and do that.
Do you think, I don't know, maybe the best way would be email or something like that. If somebody wanted to like reach out to you, maybe they listen to the podcast and they hear your story and maybe they can relate to kind of some of the stuff you're saying. But, I'm thinking maybe email or something. Could you give that information so then the people can, maybe reach out to you?
Sure. I don't mind. One of the best ways are probably, so my group that I used to sell all my fake stuff on, I reactivated it and I changed it to Light in the Darkness. And that is where I will share like personal stories, things I've gone through or people I talk to, or I just share motivational things. And that's where I post a lot of it is on that page. My email is like really old, but I can give you that one.
Maybe that page would be a great place.
Yeah, because they can message me on there, but it's spelled just that way, Light in the Darkness.
Light in the Darkness.
And that's what, because I kept looking for something to do and I kept wanting to do something else.
Outside or?
No, it's just on Facebook. I just have it on Facebook right now. Cause I'm still working on my logo.
Okay.
Now I do have a website on there that I have like the shirts link that I did, the designs, of things that I just felt like Jesus told me and I put them on a shirt. I have that linked on there. I'm just going through a website called Printify right now. So you can just order your shirt, order whatever color you want, and it ships straight to you. Cause I just don't have the funds right now to like get a bunch of inventory and things. Yeah. But I have that listed on there, and it's all on the Facebook page.
So they go to Facebook and
it'll be just light in the darkness, and it's spaced every word properly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I want people to have a chance because there really could be somebody who's listening who would like to reach out to you.
Yeah.
You know, I want to, as we kind of wrap it up, will you just like, again, back to that person who may be listening, and, you know, I think that obviously you would, you know, men and women could, you know, get some valuable information, but I think definitely a lot of women would maybe more to your story. So if somebody's listening and they are, you know, they really, you know, they're struggling and they're trying to figure out what to do. And, you know, I remember when I was in a dark moment, I felt like anything I tried wasn't working, and I felt like I didn't know what to do. And so what would your advice be to somebody listening who's struggling and they're like, what do I do?
I would, number one, remember that no matter how dark it is, you're not alone. And it may not seem like it, but Jesus is right there with you. Mm-hmm. I can look back on every single dark moment that I went through, and he was there. To know, that's the biggest thing. For me, I felt so alone. I felt like I wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But know that there is someone, they see you. And there's someone out there that is struggling just like you are, but you're enough. Without anything else, as messed up and broken as you are, you're still enough.
Mm-hmm. That's good stuff. Well, I sure appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me come.
You know, and I'd love to have you again in the future. So I think this isn't like a one and done, but, you know, and I think that, you know, our ministry, even when Miles said, it's like the goal behind it is actually to partner with people and be able to work together. Mm-hmm. And I found that whenever we like work together with other people, that it actually we're more effective.
Yeah.
You know,
we can't do it alone.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's like we're all in it for the same reason, you know, together. So, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for
your story. And I know you drove a long way to be here. And
it's okay. I got to see some customers. It was fun.
I like it too, because, you know, I do a lot also podcasts through Zoom. Mm-hmm. You see them on the screen,
right?
But you don't get to be in the same room.
Right.
So I'm really happy that you got to come and us to be able to just sit and talk, and it's really nice meeting you.
It was nice to meet you.
And I encourage everybody listening to reach out. You know, I think that like we talked about through your page on Facebook is a great place.
Yes, definitely.
And then, you know, once with this podcast, it'll be a couple of weeks it'll come out, and then, you know, we'll share it to you, and maybe you can share it as well.
I will definitely share it.
And so, but thank you guys. And again, for you guys listening, make sure that you follow the podcast and like it, review, those things help. And then, you know, don't forget about our website. I know we just posted a lot of, shirts, hats, whatever. We started an online store, and I think there's some cool stuff on there. So if you guys get a chance, check that out. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Positively Undefeated. If there was something in this show that resonated with you, please share the show with your community. If you want this show delivered each Monday morning to your podcast app of choice, please subscribe or follow. And if you'd like to get a hold of Beryl, please do so by going to berylstricker.com/contact.